The Color Out of Space is a famous short story by H.P. Lovecraft and also a film based on this very tale, which I happened to watch recently. The premise is that a meteor crashes onto a farm, bringing corruption and disease. Overnight, it sinks down underground and begins transforming the environment around it. This magenta glint is the signature of this cosmic being. It seeps into the groundwater and slowly begins altering the ecosystem on this farm. It causes strange mutations in the plants and animals. They, along with the water, become poisoned and have a psychic and biological effect on the humans that ingest them. The color transforms, mutates, and gestates entirely new life forms. It seems to have a conscious effect on electric devices too, which can malfunction or even be drained of all their energy. Does this remind you of anything? Besides Elden Ring. In an alternate world, if the story was about a rock that was simply radioactive, the effects would have been kind of similar. I mean, it wouldn't blend your alpacas into one organism, or create maelstroms of magenta light, but there are commonalities. The radiation could very well poison the groundwater, which would in turn poison the plants growing there, and then potentially poison organisms consuming those as well. Radiation damages the DNA in your cells, which can lead to mutations such as cancer. And we do see the anomaly in the film creating entirely new life forms, and mutate a cat into an abomination. Radiation can also cause more direct harm, such as burns or internal bleeding. This isn't too dissimilar to how one of the characters takes a shower in the contaminated water and then gets a weird rash on their skin. What am I getting at? Well, this film and several other pieces of media had me come to the realization which will be the main thesis of this video. Hypothetically speaking, if we lived in a universe where ionizing radiation was not a phenomenon to exist, and somebody wrote a fictional story which would tell the events of, let's say, the Chernobyl disaster in our world, this story would probably be well considered a work of cosmic horror. In this video, I want to explore some core tenets of this genre, and also discuss how radiation as a concept finds its place in popular culture. If you haven't seen the Chernobyl miniseries, it's probably one of the scariest audiovisual works of art I've ever experienced, especially the first and second episodes. This is in no small part thanks to the fantastic cinematography and soundtrack, but also due to how it portrays the danger of the ever-present radiation. The core of the power plant has exploded and is experiencing meltdown all at once. You don't actually have to have a very high education to work at a nuclear power plant, so many of these characters portrayed probably aren't even really aware of just how much danger they are in. There's radioactive debris from inside the reactor core scattered around the premises of the facility, and ever-present irradiated dust floating around the air, getting inside of people's noses and lungs. These people probably know what radiation is and a bit about how it works, but might not be fully aware of the symptoms of radiation sickness, for example. There's contradicting narratives being expressed. Some people have correctly deduced or even observed that the reactor core is exposed, while others are not so sure. Some of them aren't quite aware that every minute they're spending in the vicinity of the power plant, they're absorbing lethal doses of radiation. How does this relate to cosmic horror? I think one theme somewhat common to this genre is how there's an invisible and unobservable corruption almost permeating the air. The characters aren't aware of where the danger is coming from, because it's essentially coming from the very space around them. There's something evil and harmful about the ground they walk on, the air they breathe, or water they drink. Picture this, you're probably sitting in your room right now, as you're watching this video, and there's a bunch of items and objects around you. Hypothetically speaking, one of these bodies could be quite radioactive. It could be harming you right now, and you wouldn't know without using specialist equipment to take measurement. If you could feel the radiation, you'd basically be a dead man walking. However, just because you don't feel the radiation doesn't mean it cannot be very harmful. On an intellectual level, you can be fairly certain this isn't the case. I mean, what items do I have around me right now? My computer and peripherals, some books, lamps, pens, my piano and guitar. I know they're not made of depleted uranium-235, but at the same time, if one of these things was highly radioactive, I wouldn't know. I'd be sitting here writing the script, blissfully unaware of just how much danger I'm exposed to. This can be said of the characters in The Color Out of Space. While they're somewhat aware there's something kind of wrong in the water, they don't connect the dots until it's too late. Radiation as a phenomenon is fairly well understood by scientists. so maybe you're not so convinced this fits the bill for cosmic horror. And it does seem like a contradiction, but I look at it a bit differently. Let's hypothetically say all those Lovecraftian anomalies were real. All of these Cthulhus, Dagons, big fucking cosmic squids, whatever. Even if they fit the descriptions of those in the stories, don't you think there would still be rules and consistencies behind them? Despite what people describe the genre as nowadays, of being full of incomprehensible and strange entities, the impression I'm getting when actually reading Lovecraft is that there is a remarkable science behind a lot of it. The narrators seem to know more about the world than they probably realistically should, and somehow talk with confidence on things they should not know. Some of these stories and passages almost feel like belonging to a sort of proto-science fiction genre, such as the aforementioned Color Out of Space. Anyway, ionizing radiation is generally a result of nuclear reactions. Each atom is held together by what's called bounding energy, which actually comes directly from the matter itself. Each element has a different ratio of bounding energy to the number of nucleons, and so the heavier ones essentially fall apart and undergo fission. The lighter elements have so much bounding energy relative to their mass that they seek to bind together and undergo fusion. The byproducts of these reactions are emitted in the form of three basic types of radiation. Alpha particles are made of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, which is a helium nucleus. They're not very dangerous, mostly because they're so big that basically any matter will stop them. Beta minus and plus particles are electrons and positrons respectively, and gamma particles are gamma radiation. This is the most dangerous and hardest to protect against. The effect this has on living organisms is that the photons will excite the electrons in your body and might ionize the particles they interact with. This is the part that extends out of my sphere of knowledge, but you can probably see how this can start fucking you up. Radiation is a silent and invisible little destroyer of life. It's not malevolent or evil, it's just a phenomenon of nature. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about another piece of media. Marble Hornets is a web series on YouTube, which spanned several years. Soon after user Victor Surge created the Slender Man, and this character experienced its first surge and popularity, an unrelated group of amateur filmmakers began work on their project. This would prove to be the second burst of publicity to this Slender mythos, and this was long before the moment this meme truly hit the mainstream, with the Unity game being broadcast to millions of people. Marble Hornets actually introduced several concepts, now staples of the Slender Man. This includes video distortion, notes scribbled by troubled minds, including the now signature symbol, and not proxies. The creators have explicitly confirmed there are none of what would later become known as proxies in Marble Hornets. I think what they mean by that is that the Slender Man does not have direct mind control over its servants of chaos, though still clearly having some psychic influence. With these new concepts and traits, the creators decided to call this character something entirely new. The Operator seems to radiate a peculiar sphere of influence. It might not actually be radiation, but proximity alone clearly has an effect. The Operator is not a creature that will lunge and tear you to pieces with its claws. Instead, it's dangerous by merely existing. This hypothetical radiation has different effects on the environment around it. The aforementioned audiovisual distortion and corruption is the most obvious, seeing as everything we watch in the series was captured by a camera in the actual world. When it comes to humans, they sometimes feel unusually cold or even lose their memory. The most obvious effects are fits of coughing. They can be prevented with the right medication, but if that proves impossible, the person can experience a seizure, after which they are not themselves. Like mentioned previously, it's not like the Operator takes mind control over their victim, but they do assume an alter ego persona, which they won't remember after they've recovered. They act in violent, irrational, and inconsistent ways. Sometimes they seem to be serving the Operator, and sometimes they seem to act on some other twisted agenda. Whether or not the Operator actually emits a paranormal kind of radiation, we've got many themes classic to cosmic horror. A literally and figuratively faceless and seemingly completely indifferent entity, which cannot be reasoned or communicated with. While not physically threatening, its mere presence is hazardous, and will afflict your mind with dark thoughts, memory loss, and make you turn on your fellow man. Marble Hornets utilizes a trope, which probably has a name that I'm not aware of. It's especially prevalent these days within found footage style works. specifically living through perfectly mundane or even positive events without recording anything unusual in your memory, but upon watching back some photos or video footage, you spot something that just should not be. In fact, that's the entire premise for one of the entries. The characters are preparing to work on their student film, and the only thing out of the ordinary is that Jay remarks on feeling strangely cold while Alex says he's comfortable. However, all this time the operator was hiding in plain sight outside their window, with nobody noticing. In fact, there's another tape where a character walks into a room, turns on the lights, pans the camera across this room, and somehow completely misses the presence of this big fucking monstrosity. While the idea of some past memories being tainted by something sinister doesn't really impress me, its real power comes with you questioning the present. If I could go through an entire shooting session without noticing the otherworldly entity behind me, then what else am I not noticing right now? Similarly to the radioactive item, the operator could be somewhere under your window or in the next room over, and you would never find out. Let's talk briefly about another parallel to radiation. One of the plot points of the Chernobyl series is that the fire brigade were called in to fight the nuclear fire, which they were absolutely not aware of or equipped for. More than one of the firefighters suffer acute radiation poisoning and end up getting sent to hospital for treatment. His wife manages to track him down, and the nurse initially doesn't want to let her in. She notices the woman is pregnant and warns her to absolutely not go past the barrier shielding the patients. She doesn't know this, but the husband himself is now radioactive and poses a threat to anyone near him. Radiation will do this. While radionuclides are directly emitting death, objects drenched in this radiation will remain radioactive, even if the original source is removed. The operator sickness in Marble Hornets works similarly. While the Slenderman is the original source of the corruption, severely exposed individuals or items, such as this creepy doll, will re-emit this disease further, so to speak. The presence of the operator is not at all necessary at that point. I believe the theme of madness and degradation of mind in Marble Hornets is undersold as to its real prevalence. People usually focus on Masky or Hoodie, as they're the most obviously insane characters. However, let's consider the operator himself. While he has all these effects on the humans around him, what threat does he actually pose? The characters encounter him many times, but somehow, the worst that actually happens is they end up having a seizure and going insane for maybe a few days at most. Could it be that his goal is this banal and that's all he's interested in? Well, I think not. Maybe I'm overestimating the writing talent of the theme, but I believe this is intentionally meant to provoke questions. Every character death or disappearance in this series is caused by another human. The operator kills nobody, and Alex is the most obvious culprit. Why is that the case? Well, I believe the modus operator... That was a good one. You have to give that to me, come on. No, don't click off the video, I promise I won't do that again. The modus operator is turning people on each other. Alex and everyone else who attacks another person either believe they can appease the Slenderman or that his presence is a result of the operator's sickness, which is tied to the individuals. So by eliminating them, they hope to get rid of the operator. I think this is intentional design on behalf of the supernatural entity, as we see it taking dying or dead people into its pocket dimension of sorts, but it cannot directly kill anyone. It needs corporeal servants to do its bidding. The operator never made someone just disappear into thin air. We only ever saw him take already dead or dying humans. And I say take intentionally, as some of the bodies of his victims can be found in this pocket dimension. As for my final case study, I cannot make an analysis about radiation in fiction without mentioning the Metro franchise. Originally a trilogy of books, now also a trilogy of games. They present a bleak view of an Earth ravaged by a nuclear conflict, with the surface becoming completely uninhabitable due to the radiation and poison. Only small enclaves of human life remain, hiding like rats in the pathetic shelter that is the Moscow metro system. While people tend to describe them as sci-fi, I've recently reread the first book, and I can't help but feel like that's not a very apt description. There's so much supernatural shit going on, which would be better described by a genre like fantasy or just horror. Of course, besides the ionizing radiation we've already been discussing, and the mutated beasts born of this radiation, there's a bunch more weird and inexplicable events, which I will go about discussing now. Near the start of Metro 2033, the first book in the trilogy, Artyom, the main character, leaves his home station of exhibition with a caravan for Rizhskaya. On their way, they encounter an anomaly which almost spells their doom. This anomaly doesn't have a defined form, but it appears to be coming out of some broken pipes from the side of the tunnel. Everyone experiences it differently. Some break down crying, some keep walking forward, completely unresponsive to anything, and others faint. Artyom is the lucky one. As for him, the anomaly merely takes the form of a very loud and annoying static sound, with no attached psychic influence, which lets him get the caravan back together and save them. He encounters a similar anomaly later on when traveling with Bourbon. However, by the time he hears the static noise, his companion simply drops dead. This time he's the one saved by Khan, who turns out to be a spiritual mystic. He believes the source of the anomaly are the voices of the dead. The nuclear annihilation not only destroyed the Earth, but also heaven, hell, and purgatory. The dead now have nowhere to go, so they are stuck underground, infesting the pipes running everywhere around the metro system. This paranormal force is everywhere around the refugees, and they're usually completely unaware. Speaking of mystics, Khan isn't the only one, and he's also not just a mystic, but also a telepath. The reason why he saved Artyom is because he received a telepathic message from Hunter, begging him to go out into the tunnel. Hunter was the character who gave Artyom his call to action. They've only met once in the books and games, but interacted far more often through some unspeakable methods. Hunter told Artyom telepathically that he wasn't going to return, and it's now time for the protagonist to leave his home station. Artyom had many more paranormal dreams, which usually were followed by him needing and receiving urgent help, usually in comedically convenient ways. When he is imprisoned and about to be executed by the fascists, a group of partisans just so happen to attack the station he's at and literally take him off the noose. When he's stuck in slavery, cleaning outhouses for the Hansa, one day the guard just happens to not be there, allowing him a free escape. We know for a fact Khan assisted Artyom thanks to Hunter's intel, so I can't help but feel like these strokes of luck were somehow a result of his influence as well. Khan also says there's more malevolent telepaths, and upon meeting them, he's constantly under mental attack. Or what about this one? Artyom and another minor character get captured by a technophobic cult of what they call the Great Worm. They believe the worm dug out these metro tunnels they inhabit, and beyond these cavities there's only rock. They don't use guns, but instead blow darts with some kind of extremely deadly toxin, which usually kills a human in mere seconds. Besides this, they've got their own psychic warriors, hypnotizers. When Colonel Miller and his squad rescue Artyom, there's a part where they are using riot shields in a sort of tortoise formation, protecting the hostage and trying to leave the territory of the cult. However, the group abruptly comes to a stop, and they stop speaking. Our protagonist cannot see what's happening, so he takes a quick peek over his allies and sees that the hypnotizer is waving a white flag, pacifying them all. Artyom realizes the only way they're getting out of this alive is if he quickly lunges out with his AK and kills the hypnotizer before he himself succumbs to his influence. As he prepares and is about to fire, he describes an almost physical force pulling the gun away from the target. However, the burst still barely snags the man, and the group is released from mind control. And I mean it when I say mind control. These people aren't just hypnotizers, they're psychic warriors. This cult reminds me a lot of the various cults in Lovecraft's stories, such as Call of Cthulhu. Why is this so hard to say? In the final anomalous event on my roadmap of the things Artyom actually witnessed, I'm going to bring up the biomass. On the Metro 2 station beneath the Kremlin, the squad sees some black and shapeless entity writhing into the darkness down a flight of escalators. When it detects their presence, this matter starts to operate the escalator by itself in order to ascend piece by piece to their level. The group takes shelter on top of an abandoned train car, and it quickly starts infesting their minds. Similar to the hypnotizers from earlier, the biomass numbs out all conscious thoughts and manipulates humans for them to go walk into this abominable sludge and become consumed entirely. The group tries to ward off the mental attack by focusing on singing songs, but those eventually get drowned out as well. Several people cannot resist and end up swallowed whole by the pool of liquid filling up most of the station's volume. The attack ends when two soldiers decide to detach the fuel tank from their portable flamethrower. One of them throws it as far as they can away from the train car, while the other takes aim and fires. The resulting explosion almost throws Artyom off the roof, but this is enough for the biomass to squirm and retreat to the depths whence it came. The colonel speculates this entity is the result of some experimental bioweapon, and maybe it is, but its origin doesn't really matter for me to say that this is a pretty cosmic horror thing to exist within the story of the books. These were anomalies that Artyom himself witnessed, but there's so much more he heard as urban legends. Stories of caravans going through a cursed tunnel with an inexplicable darkness literally swallowing the last member, or a state of paranoia induced by traveling alone through the tunnels, characterized by a never-ending feeling of something sinister being just behind you. Who knows how many of these there are true, but given Artyom's own experiences, I wouldn't be surprised if all of them were. What am I getting at here? Well, this excess of strange and paranormal events seems like it cannot be a mere product of the nuclear bombs. The mutants I can buy, though I don't think that's how animals mutated as a result of radiation would look like, but that's just become a trope of post-apocalyptic fiction now. What I'm more concerned about is all the entities and events straight out of Lovecraft's work finding their way into my backyard of sci-fi post-apocalypse. This all cannot be explained by just radiation. I'm also glossing over everything related to the main antagonists of all the story, because there's just too much to cover. Still, you can take my word for there being a ton more Lovecraftian themes about them, and I encourage you to read the book to find out more. I believe the nuclear holocaust fucked up the very fabric of the universe, at least locally, and now it is as if other realities are bleeding into our own. Or maybe instead of destroying, it created a localized otherworld, so to speak. Khan in the games also says the metro system itself is alive. I don't quite buy that on a literal level. These concrete walls look pretty dead to me. However, I get what he's trying to say, in the same way that dead matter becomes living matter due to it being able to self-sustain some processes, and in the same way non-conscious living organisms become conscious organisms just due to the increase in the complexity of their neural activity. The metro itself became something more than just a bunch of tunnels. All these anomalies don't seem like they're just existing in the spaces between, but it's almost like something is occasionally manifesting them, as if some defense mechanism from intruders, not unlike antibodies attacking foreign viruses within the bloodstreams of animals. Many of the events and themes of the books have such a cosmic horror vibe to them, and it seems to have been kickstarted by some mundane weapons of mass destruction. The metro, originally dug out by human machines, has become an unexplainable, incomprehensible, and self-sustaining system of something that isn't quite living, but also kind of is. It might possess some mind-adjacent property, and maybe even agency over what happens within itself. Doesn't this sound like something straight out of Lovecraft? An entity that defies human understanding of the world, mighty and very uncaring towards us. Let's say you've invented a way to jump between parallel universes. You come from a universe with different laws of physics to ours, and ionizing radiation is not a phenomenon to exist there. You visit our reality and learn of this strange property that some materials inherently have. These materials can be mostly dug out from the rotting bowels of the earth, and mere proximity puts you at risk of an invisible influence which alters your body and can cause you serious harm. Before this interaction was understood, many scientists died studying these rocks, completely unaware of what dangerous and powerful thing they were holding in their drawers. As radiation was better understood, people learned it's a great way to obtain large quantities of energy from a very small amount of mass. We started building huge complexes with the specialized technology necessary to control this ancient power and keep it safe. However, things occasionally go wrong. Freak accidents, human errors, or natural disasters cause untold amount of destruction and decay to be unleashed upon entire regions. In fact, regarding some cases, the spikes in background radiation were detectable everywhere around the planet. The way the wider world learned about the Chernobyl disaster wasn't through a statement from the Soviet Union, It was from measurements taken by other countries when they noticed something was terribly wrong. Now substitute the word radiation with dark magic in the preceding story, and you've got yourself a classic tale of Lovecraftian horror. This is exactly the kind of theme prevalent to his work, and in those inspired by him, such as Dusk. Well, I've been thinking long and hard about how to close this video. Usually when I'm done writing a script, I feel like my thoughts on the subject at hand I can better understand and it's not even written no, it is written correctly. Compartmentalize. I've got them out of my system, but not now. Perhaps appropriately for what I've been talking about, I almost feel like I haven't explained or straightened out anything, but merely made an even bigger mess. All that's to say, radiation is freaking scary, man. To me, it's one of the #1 things to be feared about this world when it comes to real and verifiable phenomena. That doesn't make me opposed to nuclear power, as it's also mathematically one of the safest power sources. It's just that when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. The thought that something in the literal water could be permanently and consistently changing my body to be falling apart is incredibly unsettling. Thanks for watching. Only small enclaves of human life remain. Enclaves? Or enclaves? I always thought it was enclaves, but...
Enclaves.
Yeah, it's enclaves. I was right!